Hello and welcome to another edition of the Mabe Podcast. Our guest today is the esteemed Laura Gardner. Hello, Laura. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
And we're happy to have you. So glad you could make the time. And this is a very important time for this discussion on supporting immigrant students and families with all that's going on in the world. But to back up a little, so you had many years' experience in all the things social work, education, refugee resettlement. And now you have an organization, Immigrant Connections, which I can see right there on your lovely screen. So tell me, how did that come to be?
Yeah, that's a good story. So basically, I'll give you a little of the lead up to how Immigrant Connections got started. So essentially, I had worked in refugee resettlement for about 10 years, and then I had worked in schools, both as a school social worker and in another district for a while. I was coordinating all of the district's kind of immigrant and EL and ML family and community engagement. And so anyway, just through kind of that refugee nonprofit side as well as the school district side of things, what I was noticing is that there were often trainings, PDs, whatever you want to call it, available for educators, right? But the trainings tended to focus pretty specifically on the English language acquisition side of things, right? And I kept saying, but there's so much more to working with these
Mhm.
students and families. There's trauma, they got to go to immigration court, there's separated from my parents, there's just all the things, right? And so
Mm.
I said, well, you know what? There's a need. I know there's a need for training on these other topics. And so I'm gonna do it. A lot of women of prayer. I'm gonna start this organization. And so that's what we did in 2017. So later this year, it'll have been 9 years where I started up the organization. And the last time I counted, we had done teacher trainings in about 30 states at this point. It actually might be higher. I haven't counted in a while. But
Mhm.
it turned out to kind of be like my prediction was accurate. Like there was definitely a need for this kind of thing.
Yeah, wow. Because yeah, you can't really have one without the other. You need to know the instructional strategies. You need to understand the students and what they're going through. And even, in my time in education, you see instances where schools they might already have multilingual learners, but they get a new group, especially when there's a resettlement in the area, and they get larger numbers of students of a different category from a different country in a different situation as far as how they came to be in the country, and that can just change things drastically very quickly. Your approach has to change, and
Completely.
understanding the instructional side is a good start. It's one thing, but it's also important to know the other side as well, this side. Um,
Exactly.
so tell me, what is your work like now? You're almost 10 years in. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Tell us about the work you do.
Yeah, so we continue to focus on educator trainings. We're still pretty focused, kind of K to 12. And I would say that, well, obviously we had the COVID years in there. So there's been lots of,
Mhm.
adjusting and adapting. But um, to this day, I would say, some of our trainings are in person, some are online, live, right? Synchronous on Zoom or what have you. And then we also have self-paced classes. But the thing that I'm um, probably most proud of is over the years, how much better we've gotten at partnering with immigrant leaders. Maybe it could be parents, could be student leaders, community leaders, what have you, but really partnering with immigrants and community leaders to make sure that they're helping as much as possible to co-facilitate the trainings to I mean, I always joke, but I'm serious. I'm a white lady from Ohio. I am not an immigrant, right? And so part of our mission is to help, elevate the voices of students, families, communities, et cetera, who are living like this is their lived experience, right? And so kind of using, I think of Immigrant Connections as kind of like a platform, but that the whole purpose is to elevate the voices of students, families, and communities, if that makes sense. So I feel very proud that, I mean, initially like any small business owner, I mean, I was doing the hustle and a lot of the trainings were more just me in the early days.
Mhm.
And then, you really got it, built up a bit. And then we've been able to just in, for example, I did look at the numbers. In 2025, we were able to donate almost $19,000 to immigrant nonprofit organizations as like a thank you for partnering with us
Mhm.
on different things. So for a small company like ours, a small organization, that's pretty substantial to have, So anyway, that's kind of one thing I'm proud of and directs our work, I would say.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds substantial. Um, so you're doing a lot of things right, I hear. Sounds like to me. But also something I thought of as you were talking is also the way, in regards, also kind of feeds off what I just said prior. And then, um, so sometimes you have like a group there, and they're well represented in the school. But again, if you get this new group, there might be one group that's being they feel like the school sees them, their culture is being represented. But then again, you might have a new group or a smaller group, and they're not having that experience. So there's just, yeah, many layers to this.
Right.
Um, so what would you
Well, and
say
can I add something to
yeah,
that really quick?
please.
I definitely we were actually just talking about this today. I was facilitating a training. I live in Cleveland, right? I have consultants in different states and different, teammates, but I live in the Cleveland area, and so I was facilitating a training that was school counselors, primarily school counselors, in the Cleveland area. And in Cleveland, I mean, the Latino population here is mostly Puerto Rican
Hmm.
and is not in many districts the highest. Like Spanish isn't necessarily the highest number, highest, you know, spoken language, which I know you can relate to in Michigan, where you have districts
Right.
where Arabic is number one.
Yes.
Arabic is actually number one in the district that I live in, right?
Mhm.
But anyway, I was kind of talking about this earlier in this training because where I used to work in Maryland and Virginia districts out that way, Spanish is by far the
Right.
greatest language, right? And then you get, right, your other little populations that I do think kind of get lost along the way because they're like, the numbers are crazy where you'll be like, because the districts are also huge there, it'll be like
Hmm.
50,000 Spanish speakers, and then it'll be like 800 Urdu speakers or
You're right.
something.
Right.
It's like the numbers, it's hard to get districts to pay attention sometimes to
Yeah.
the all the other languages.
Yeah. And again, sometimes, well-intentioned people, well-intentioned, talented people sometimes, amidst the chaos of day, succumb to that. And you have to remind them, like, well, but it does matter to these students. And the number isn't
Yeah,
that small. But even if it
yeah.
were, yeah, definitely. Um, so what are some misconceptions teachers have about immigrant students?
It's sort of, I mean, teachers obviously are a subsection of the average, American public, right? So the question might more be kind of more broadly, just like general misconceptions, right? And, to this day, one of the slides we always, pretty much always, include in our trainings is the one where we kind of go through what's the difference between an immigrant, refugee, asylum
Hmm.
seeker, migrant, and we go over like the education definitions for those words, right? Like you and I know Title III has a specific definition for immigrant that's very different
Hmm.
than the immigration definition of immigrant, that kind of thing. So we clarify all the terminology and literally just did this morning. And inevitably, one, it's always the number one thing mentioned on the evaluations. People are like, thank
Hmm.
you. That was so helpful. You cleared up so many things for me. Um, and, they just, I don't know, people, we don't know, right? Also, the media mixes up different things and doesn't, they always
Right.
throw around the word migrant and this and that and the other. And just the average person doesn't kind of know. The thing that I'm thinking about is really comes down to, again, the whole reason why my organization exists. And I know the language lovers who are listening to this are gonna bristle, right? But like it's so much more than just language, right? Like all the things, like I started talking about earlier. So I'll give you an example. Again, sorry, this morning is kind of fresh on my mind. We're talking about different populations different events that have led to certain populations coming over. Like we were talking about humanitarian parole and the Afghans and the Ukrainians and all this kind of stuff. And so I asked the audience, there's probably 60 people in the audience. And I said, how many of you have Afghan students? We're looking around. I don't know. Then I said, how many of you have Dari or Pashto speakers? Oh, I do.
Hmm.
They don't even know they're Afghan, right? And I'm
Right.
like you, these are kids and families who have fled a war zone, right? There's so much that goes along with understanding the Afghan experience and everything they've gone through in recent years and are still going through as they try to find a way to permanently, stay here. Um, and so just to see those students as like Dari speaker, I'm
Right.
like, you're missing the boat. Like you're missing
Yeah.
the bigger picture of this whole community.
Hmm.
And so we had a little chat about that.
And also too, the fact that, Afghanistan has two languages
Yeah,
that
more than that. I mean,
that's,
there's more than
yeah.
that. Yeah.
I know the two, yeah, but that's often because I was at a school where we got some students, and it's just, and again, a lot of it was legitimate, well-intentioned people. I had to sometimes remind myself, but we had some Arabic speaking staff, and they just always wanted to go to the Arabic speakers, and it's like, no, they don't speak their language. And what do you mean? Like, they just don't
Yeah.
speak their
We have
language.
that a lot. I've seen that
Yeah.
in other districts too, where we were doing we were partnering with the Arab American community on a
Mhm.
training, and I had a lot of people emailing saying, but you're going to talk about the Afghans, right? And I was like, the Afghans aren't Arab. And they're like, what? So
Yeah.
yeah, just like trying to, clarify all of that. I mean, in the US, I mean, I think about my own education, the US isn't really that strong when it comes to geography. And
Mhm.
I mean, I don't blame people. I just think we need to do a little more either PD or Googling, whatever have you, just to try to understand a little bit more about the bigger picture of, groups that are they're coming to us.
So I'm interested for your thoughts on this because I know to me it's very gray, but talking about topics around immigration status with students. What are your thoughts on that? Because it's neither A nor B nor Z nor M. Can you talk about
Yes,
more?
yes. Oh my God, so many thoughts. Okay, well, let's clarify for everyone who's listening first. Um, let's remember the Plyler versus Doe case, right? So that was the 1982 Supreme Court case that resulted in, we're not allowed to ask immigration
Mhm.
status. There's a few things I want to say. One, I'm going to say the policy piece first, but since I mentioned Plyler, it is important to note that there are a number of states right now, including where I live in Ohio, that are trying to challenge that, right? So
Mhm.
I don't think Michigan is one of those states. Are you
So let's just
guys?
say like though, but so what they're trying to challenge is specifically that you're not to ask students or
Yeah,
families
so
about their
in
immigration
Ohio,
status.
yeah, in
Okay.
Ohio, the House bill that they're trying to push through would require all educators to ask their students immigration
Okay.
status upon
Mhm.
enrollment.
So no,
I
no, we're
don't
not
think
doing
that,
that in Michigan right now.
okay, right. So Ohio, Tennessee, West Virginia, I don't know, there's a whole bunch of them. And the idea would be, I think the Heritage Foundation has a whole report on this. The idea is that um, essentially it would get like if one of these states passes one of these laws, essentially it would get kicked back to the Supreme Court, and
Oh,
most people are predicting that it would Plyler versus Doe would be
mm,
overturned, and then
right,
all across America we will be asking our students immigration status. So there's a campaign called the Education for All campaign being run by NILC, the National Immigration Law Center, and some other players. So even if it's not happening in Michigan, people
right.
may want to join that campaign to kind of help the rest of us
Hmm.
who are fighting that in our states because ultimately it will affect you, right? So that's the first thing.
Hmm.
Now, assuming, let's just go back, let's just pretend Plyler stands and all of that. Um, I will say as a social worker, this is a very delicate dance because when I did school social work, right, like I knew I don't ask immigration status, right? I'm not going to ask the student, I'm not going to ask the parent. But as you and I know, when you build trusting relationships with kids and families, they often will tell you, which is fine,
Hmm.
right? And for me, when I did school social work, that was pretty helpful information to know because if I'm trying to help someone access community resources, I don't know which way to direct them unless I kind of know that, right? And then you
Right.
have all the mixed status families where maybe the youngest uh, child in the family is a citizen, the next one up, has I don't know, maybe TTS, and then the next one, is undocumented or whatever. And then you're like trying to point them in the right direction. And then I know for more of the teachers, how many teachers are trying to help. I'm thinking of like our high school students when they go to apply for college and they're struggling trying to figure out what am I eligible for and that kind of thing. So I think that there's clearly no short answer to your question, but I do
Right.
think that it is really important that teachers create a safe space in their classrooms so that students know that you're there to listen and receive that information or help them in some way, shape, or form. So you're like open, but you're not asking.
Hmm.
That would be
Right.
my take on it. What I don't know what you think.
Well, I think that sounds good. It's also too, I mean, I'm primary, so secondary, it's different, especially if you're working with students, trying to get them, encouraging them to attend college, and that's a huge barrier. Whereas like elementary,
Right.
that's not we're not there yet.
Yeah, in
We,
elementary, it more comes up in conversations with parents.
hmm.
I will say one other thing about this. It's tricky, right? I think about your average high school counselor, well, middle school or high school,
Hmm.
really any level for that matter, where they or teachers, right? We as educators tend to say things like, "You can be anything you want to be," and like the sky's the limit. It tends to
Yeah,
put
that kind of
everything
talk.
on the student, right?
Hmm.
Like if they don't succeed in A, B, C, or D, it's their fault, whereas there are a lot of
Right.
structural barriers, right?
Mhm.
So that always makes me, I always it's weird. It's a dance again. You
Yes.
don't want to tell a student like forget it, you're out of luck. Like
Yeah.
it ain't happening for you. No, like you want to keep them motivated and working towards things, but we
But
have to
yeah.
recognize the structural barriers. It's not the student's fault if they, their mom brought them over when they're 4 months old or whatever, and then now they can't access
Mhm.
college.
There's just a lot to it, but also just yeah, remembering the need to know, and yeah, the need to know basis, and also just keeping open. Like there's two possibilities here, and I just need to tread, understanding that it might be this or it might be that, and usually it's the same thing. Over time, you're going to have. If you have the student population, it's the same mentality, so you shouldn't have to be constantly shifting it. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, we want to
I,
support them, but sometimes too, you just have to stay in your lane. And if they're not, don't ask them to talk about something that they're not ready to talk about with you or that they might not fully
right.
understand
Well,
themselves.
you know how a lot of assignments will incorporate like your journey to America and things like that. I think it's the
Hmm.
same kind of idea here where we have to have a very open space and maybe like an option on an assignment. If someone
Hmm.
wants to, maybe it is very therapeutic and healing and like they want to talk about it, right? They want to
Yes.
write about it, they want to draw about it, they want to do whatever. We can't force them to do that. So the
Right.
assignments that are like there's one option and you have to write about your journey to America. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that makes me really nervous.
Hmm.
Um, I think reimagining migration. The you probably know that org, Adam Strum and his team. They've done a pretty good job of. They have a lot of resources on their website for helping students, both
Hmm.
immigrant students and non-immigrant students thinking about how migration is a part of human history and a part of so many people's lives and kind of like weaving those themes into different assignments and things like that. I'm probably not described or not doing it justice. They do a
Well,
lot of great
yeah.
work there, but
Yeah.
that's kind of how I think of it.
We hear what you're saying. So what are some of the outcomes that you hope to see, as a result of your work or as a result of teachers, implementing these practices?
One of our biggest learning objectives and then therefore outcomes is probably one of the most difficult to measure, and it has to do with empathy, right?
Hmm.
And so, especially here in the US now, where they're just, I feel like empathy and like seeing immigrants as fellow human beings and all of that is like so missing right now. And so I'll tell you an example. I don't actually know if you know about this. I'll tell you one of our types of trainings we do that's really geared towards building empathy. So it's this we call them the cultural immersion trainings, but the idea was many years ago, probably 15 years ago, I was having a moment of frustration. This was before Immigrant Connections. I was working in a
Hmm.
district in Maryland, and I was having a moment of frustration with a teacher where I just really, they were not having any empathy for this student from El Salvador. And I had this secret little wish in my head. I didn't say it out loud that I could ship them to El Salvador from summer, a little empathy, bring them back, kind of thing. And so, along those lines, obviously, everybody does not necessarily get the opportunity to travel outside the United States. Or if they do, maybe they go to a more, Europe or something like that. Maybe
Yeah.
don't have the opportunity to travel to like some of the countries a lot of our students are coming from. And so I worked when this model was first forming, talked to some immigrant parents and community leaders and so on. And we were like, there's plenty of places in multiple communities around the United States where you can, uh, like Dearborn, right, or certain place, you can go for the
Hmm.
day and like you can shop, you can see where people worship, you can visit different nonprofit organizations, and you maybe don't hear English all day, right, or what have you. So we formed this 1 day PD model around this idea that has played out a little differently in different states. We're actually going to be doing it in Novi, June 9th. We're going to be in Novi, Michigan doing this. And so the idea is we get usually, I'll give you the classic model. We typically
Hmm.
take 75 educators, could be anyone, right? It could be a gen ed teacher, it could be a school counselor, ML teacher, principal, whatever. Break them into 5 groups, and then we hire for the day 5 community leaders, sometimes immigrant community leaders. Sometimes we focus on one particular culture or country of origin or language, but sometimes we do multiple. And I think with Novi we're going to do multiple on 1 day.
Hmm.
um and so then obviously with tons of preparation, we work with the community leaders to identify what are three places in the community that are important to your, immigrant community. Usually a
Hmm.
place of worship, usually some kind of nonprofit organization, and often a grocery store or shopping plaza or whatever of sorts. And so we bring everybody in the morning to a central training location. Then we all go out on our site visits, and then we come back and we eat a lunch together where we get to try lots of different new foods. It's a really fun, um,
Hmm.
you know, cultural. I don't want to say potluck because we don't bring the food. We partner with immigrant business like catering companies and things like that, and we
Hmm.
try all the foods. And then we do a panel discussion and then a lot of debriefing and that kind of stuff. And we've been talking with some universities and trying to figure out how we could, we always do evaluations and things, but do something that's like a much more rigorous, like
Hmm.
research study on this because it really does seem to change hearts and minds, especially the pieces where, like in the grocery stores, we usually send people on scavenger hunts. So, like, here's the list of 10 grocery items in Arabic. Good luck. And
Hmm.
ML teachers are used to thinking about that kind of
Yeah.
thing, but your
Hmm.
average teacher is not. And so they usually freak out. What do we do? I don't speak this language, like all that kind of stuff. And so we tell them, like use whatever tools, use your tools. What are your tools? Well, besides, of course, phones, my favorite thing, I don't even remember what city we were in when we did this, but my favorite one was one time a teacher saw their student's parent working in the store and grabbed them by the hand and were like, help me. and the parent explained everything to them. The parent was the expert, right? And walked them through the whole thing and calmed them down and helped them find the items. So, hey, remember your original question, but oh, the outcomes.
Yeah.
Empathy. It's really hard to measure, but I think so many things would fall into place in our schools if
Hmm.
in our country if we had more empathy. So
Hmm.
that really is kind of the crux of our mission, I would say.
Yeah. And I just would add to that too. Again, it's that sense of feeling seen. If you feel seen, students will work harder in school. They'd be less likely to give up or drop out, when they feel that sense of belonging and connecting with adults. It's just sometimes too, they're just not ready for a certain time. And so you have to be patient
Yeah.
with them. You can't expect certain outcomes immediately with an individual student.
I love the stories that I've heard after those trainings where, let's say, I don't know, teachers have visited like a certain mosque or something, they take pictures and they go back to their class and they show the students, like, look, I visited your mosque. And the students are like blown away, right? They're like, what? Or they show them the stuff they bring, they usually buy stuff at the grocery stores. Look what I bought, like that kind of stuff. And it's so like easy, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it's like, it we all are in our own little worlds. Like, you know, there could be a mosque that I pass every single day on my commute, but like, I'm not Muslim. Did I ever have a reason to go in, or did I know
Mhm.
anyone that could kind of open that door literally and figuratively for me? Maybe not, so this gives you an opportunity to like access those kinds of things.
Yes. All right. Well, that sounds like it would be a very rewarding exercise, and schools could do it and it would be good. But definitely, when you have someone like you who's really trained in doing it, that's when you get your bang for your buck, and you really have someone to lead you toward the outcomes that you want.
Thanks. Yeah, the other piece that has been interesting around that is I've done a lot of thinking and doing
Mhm.
around equity with these, because what happens is a lot of times, let's say, for example, sure, in a local school district, I'm sure there are parents that would volunteer to, hey, I'll take you to the store down the street, or I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
But we pay all of the tour guides, right? Like whoever the community leaders are, we pay all the site visits because they're taking time. They're
Hmm.
the experts for the day. They're the consultant. They're the
Hmm.
guru, that you're so it is a expensive training because we truly believe, like, why would I set up something where I got paid and
Right.
but the experts of the
Hmm.
day did not get paid? Like, that's icky. So
Hmm.
yeah, so it tends to be a fairly expensive training because there's so many people and organizations involved and we pay everyone.
Okay, so if we want to learn more about your organization, then we can visit www.immigrantrefugeesandschools.org.
Correct.
And also, you can just Google Immigrant Connections, which is what I did, and
Yeah.
got to learn all about you. You mentioned one earlier. Can you remind us what that resource was you told us earlier, and any other resources that people might look toward?
Yeah, reimagining migration with Adam Strom and his team. They have a lot of great resources on their website for like incorporating um, migration stories into the work. And again, they're focused both on MLs and like immigrant students, and making sure our US born students understand kind of the bigger picture of migration in
Mhm.
like world history, I would say.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We had you last summer at our Newcomer Summit, and you gave a wonderful keynote, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you again. Thank you for all you do. Have a great one.
All right. Thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.